On Christmas Eve, a little girl's touching request transformed a homeless woman's life forever. Emily stood at the kitchen window, her breath fogging up the glass as she watched snowflakes dance through the brisk air, settling gently on the ground. The tiny girl was wrapped in her faded red sweater, its sleeves slightly too long, and her face lit up with the glow of anticipation for Christmas. Excitement buzzed in her chest like a firefly, but there was something else in ache she couldn't quite put into words. She knew the holiday was different this year, quieter than usual for her mother, Sarah, who juggled 2 jobs to keep their modest home afloat. As Sarah pushed through the door, her heavy coat barely concealing the exhaustion etched on her face, Emily's heart skipped. "Mom, can we invite Mary to dinner tomorrow?" she asked, her voice bubbling with innocence. Sarah froze, her heart tightening like a vice. The relentless anxiety of bills, late paychecks, and judgmental glances from others in town squeezed the corners of her mind. A simple dinner felt unbearable with one more seat to fill. "Sweetheart, she hesitated, the words catching in her throat. Why couldn't she embrace Emily's unwavering kindness? What did it matter if they had just enough for themselves? Could they really afford to add someone else into the mix? Her heartbeat quickened, panic tightening her chest as she battled the tide of conflicting feelings. She loved her daughter fiercely, but the burden lay heavy. Before Sarah could respond, Emily continued with hopeful fervor, "But Mom. She's alone. Don't you remember the way she smiled when I sang at the shelter?" A surge of frustration coursed through Sarah, as if Emily's simple request had pulled back the curtain on her struggles, exposing the fragility of their life. Heaviness settled in the pit of her stomach. Did she even have enough to offer Mary a warm plate of food? Did they have room in their hearts for one more soul? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The pressure mounted. Emily's bright blue eyes sparkled with unwavering belief as she clung to hope. "Mom, she has nobody, just like us." Each word chipped away at Sarah's resolve, peeling back the layers of her practical facade. Inside, a storm raged, a mix of guilt for wanting to say no and the fear that they weren't enough. Was this family's state so precarious that they couldn't extend their hearts? The very notion of Mary's plight gnawed at Sarah, creating waves of bitterness and understanding that collided violently. As snowflakes collected thick on the windowsill, Emily's innocence was a shield against the harsh realities Sarah couldn't escape. Just then, thoughts of Mary's unwavering smile, contrasting with the shadow of Sarah's weariness, served as the haunting reminder of the warmth they both desperately craved in a life so cold. The interplay of hope and despair hung in the air like the scent of pine needles. Would they ever find the strength to change their circumstances, or would the weight of their own lives stifle the kindness Emily so vividly sought to share? As the snow continued to swirl outside, Sarah fought the turmoil raging in her mind. She glanced over at Emily, whose bright face reflected the light of a hope that felt impossibly heavy for any adult to carry. The girl's words lingered in the room, echoing like a bell tolling through her thoughts, "Just like us." The stark reality of their situation clashed painfully with the tender compassion Emily offered, leaving Sarah grappling with hidden desires. Could they somehow be strong enough to open their doors to another? Images of their own sparse meals flashed through her mind, coupled with the bitter taste of guilt. Here was Emily, blameless and bundled in optimism while she herself wrestled with dread. Her heart raced as she paced away from the window, feeling the weight of her responsibilities in the pit of her stomach. Instead of finding solace in motherhood, she felt more like a barrier, a wall built out of the very necessities that pinned her to the ground. In an effort to construct a response, she fumbled for words, her mind grappling with the knife-edge balance between donating kindness and safeguarding their fragile stability. Emily's innocence drew on Sarah's own buried dreams, and for a fleeting moment, she closed her eyes to remember the excitement of sharing simple joys. She could feel her daughter's gentle belief pressing against her heart, challenging her defenses. But could they open their home or their hearts when there was so little to go around? Emily, Sarah's voice wavered, catching the child's attention. What if we invited Mary but didn't cook a full feast? What if we just set one more place for her at the table? The light in Emily's eyes split open like the dawn of realization. You mean it? She exclaimed, breathlessly hopeful. The corners of Sarah's mouth twitched upwards, a faint flicker of warmth beginning to thaw the cold anxiety she had carried for far too long. Yes, but only if you help me keep things simple. We'll make some soup, maybe a few sandwiches, Sarah suggested, her tone cautious. It was a compromise, a way to stretch the limits of their reality without forcing her to confront the cold, hard truth. It felt right and wrong all at once. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emily began to rattle off ideas for their modest meal. Her excitement breathed life back into Sarah's weary spirit, and, together, they began to prepare. As they chopped vegetables and stirred pots, the once overbearing silence of their home began to blossom into hopeful chatter. Yet, for Sarah, there was still a poignant flicker of doubt, a question unasked lingered in the back of her mind. What if Mary's presence highlighted their struggles, exposing their vulnerabilities? Was this truly the right path for them? In that moment, as she knelt beside Emily, chopping onions with purpose, the realization struck this wasn't just about one dinner. It was a step toward understanding generosity, a chance to unburden herself, to see if there was more strength in her heart than she had previously believed. As they finished preparing the meal, Sarah's thoughts swirled. Tomorrow would arrive not only with food and warmth but the potential for connection, for conversation, and transformation both for Mary and for them. Would the courage they took to reach out serve to bridge the widening gap in their lives? Just as the last light of sunset crept behind the horizon, Sarah sensed a change within herself, ignited by the little girl who sparked hope in her heart. The following day was shaping into something monumental, but would it compound their struggles or forge a new connection? She glanced out the window again, watching the shadows deepen among the snow. The future loomed like the tempestuous clouds overhead, uncertain and vast. And, with an unsettling thrill, she knew that tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning arrived grim and overcast, the snow having settled deep and heavy on the ground, muffling the world in a blanket of white. Inside, however, Sarah felt the stirrings of something vibrant. Her heart raced, not with dread but with a tentative excitement. Today was not just about a simple meal, it symbolized a fragile step into the unknown, a venture rooted in generosity yet laced with trepidation. As she and Emily tidied up the kitchen, Sarah's mind churned with calculations. She could barely remember the last time she felt so many conflicting emotions: hope, anxiety, anticipation. Were they enough to make Mary feel welcome, or was the stark truth of their situation too prominent, bearing down on their good intentions? "Mom, do we have enough bread?" Emily asked, standing on tiptoes to sift through the cupboards, her small frame bursting with enthusiasm. The look of determination on Emily's face melted some of Sarah's apprehension. Maybe today wouldn't just be a test of their resources, it would also reveal an aspect of motherhood she had almost forgotten: the joy of sharing, however small the offering. "Let's check," Sarah replied, masking her turbulent feelings with a smile. As they searched, a slight noise outside caught her attention, and she peered out the window to see Mary trudging through the snow towards their door. A surge of panic rushed through her. What had she prepared for this moment? The simple sandwich and soup felt woefully inadequate in the face of a stranger's potential suffering. "Mom, she's here," Emily squealed, her eyes widening in excitement. Sarah's heart sank again, the looming reality of their situation bearing down. Could one meal bridge the gap between their worlds? Before she could process the implications, Emily had flown to the door, throwing it open with zeal. "Good morning, Mary. Come in." As Mary stepped inside, shaking off the snow, Sarah felt her resolve waver. The warmth of Emily's smile contrasted sharply with the tightening in her chest. She hadn't prepared for this confrontation, a real-life connection to the circumstances that haunted her, the struggle for survival, the bitterness of loss. Could they truly welcome this woman, knowing how scant their resources were? "Hello," Mary said, her voice low and soothing, even with the chill of the outside air still clinging to her coat. "Thank you for having me." Sarah inhaled deeply, gathering her composure, reminding herself of Emily's unwavering belief. "We're glad you could join us. We've made some soup and sandwiches." The simple honesty of the words felt almost inadequate against the enormity of their act of kindness. Would it be enough? As they settled at the table, Sarah's internal compass spun wildly. Mary's presence was a reminder of everything she worried about, but it was also a challenge to step beyond. Each glance at Emily, her eyes filled with innocence and hope, pushed Sarah to confront her self-imposed limitations. Could she be more than the protector hiding behind the walls of her modest existence? As they ate and shared stories, Sarah felt a gradual warmth suffusing her heart. Mary laughed easily, her laughter ringing in harmony with Emily's childlike giggles. It was as if barriers were beginning to dissolve. Each bite swallowed became a message of resilience, a small but significant act of shared humanity. Yet, buried beneath the laughter was an undercurrent of uncertainty. Sarah's thoughts raced. What would happen after this meal? Could she maintain this newfound sense of connection? Was inviting Mary into their lives merely dropping a pebble into the vast ocean of their struggles, or would it create ripples that transformed them? As the meal dwindled down, and Mary thanked them for the kindness they showed, Sarah felt the tightening grip of fear around her heart. Today had sparked something pivotal, but she realized this was only the beginning. Closing her eyes for a moment, she sensed the weight of a larger question pressing down on her. How far was she willing to stretch for another? The walls that had confined her began to quiver. How much of herself could she risk exposing? With every laugh, every shared story, Sarah's defenses began to buckle. Would this connection pull them together or expose her deeper vulnerabilities? As Mary stood to leave, Sarah made a bold decision, propelled by a strength she had forgotten existed. "Mary, would you consider joining us again tomorrow?" The look in Emily's eyes mirrored the hope within her, a hope that she was finally beginning to embrace herself, a sliver of determination breaking free from doubt. But even as Mary smiled, moving to answer, Sarah's pulse quickened with the realization that tomorrow held its own formidable challenges, and one question loomed large: would they have the strength to welcome not just a new friend but the possibility of change into their lives? The morning arrived crisp and clear, the snow glistening like diamonds under the bright sun. Sarah stood by the kitchen window, her heart beating steadily as she watched the sunlight dance across the landscape. The warmth of the room contrasted starkly with the biting cold outside, and within her, an unfamiliar warmth flickered to life. The previous day had shifted something inside her, a revelation sparked by the simplest of gestures. Emily had observed the world with innocent wonder, and Mary had brought stories that breathed life into their otherwise quiet home. Yet today felt laden with expectation. Sarah turned from the window, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. She thought of Mary, her struggles laid bare during their brief meal together, and recognized the weight of responsibility she now felt for this new connection. The act of kindness had bridged a rift, but could it withstand the realities of their lives? She felt the urgency to nurture this budding friendship, as if ignoring it would send them spiraling back into isolation. "Mom, can we bake cookies today?" Emily asked, her voice dancing with excitement. There was a bounce in her steps as she approached Sarah, her small hands clasped together, a tangible manifestation of her hope. "Yes, we can definitely make cookies," Sarah replied, her mind already racing with ideas. She recalled Mary's mention of her love for chocolate chip cookies, an echo of shared memories from when life felt fuller. The thought pushed her through the kitchen door as she rummaged through the cupboards, gathering flour, sugar, and chocolate chips. The act of creating something together felt empowering, a reminder that even small moments could forge connections. As the dough formed under her hands, each knead was accompanied by an inner dialogue. What if it wasn't enough? What if she didn't know how to maintain the warmth they had created? Emily hummed nearby, oblivious to her mother's turmoil, and yet her presence became a grounding force. Sarah marveled at how in a world fraught with challenges, Emily's innocence shone brightly, inviting positivity into the chaos. "Can I help?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with the desire to participate. "Of course." Sarah smiled and handed over the mixing bowl, feeling the tension slowly release. As they stirred and rolled, laughter echoed around the kitchen, each chuckle breaking down barriers that Sarah had erected. With every batch that filled the air with sweet aromas, she noticed how the act of creating together was as crucial as the product itself, a lesson buried deep within her. The warm scent of cookies wafted through the house, mingling with the memories of laughter and shared stories. They prepared to deliver their creations to Mary, each cookie a token of their growing relationship. The thought of bringing food to someone devoid of warmth made her heart race, not just in trepidation, but in anticipation. In her heart, Sarah questioned if they were ready to share not just sweets, but pieces of their hearts. "Let us make a card for her too," Emily suggested, her innocence guiding them into new territory. "Great idea," Sarah replied, and they sat at the kitchen table, crayons in hand. Each stroke on the paper felt like the creation of a bridge connecting them to Mary. As Emily embellished the card, Sarah lost herself in reflection. She considered how a simple gesture could ripple through lives, binding them in unexpected ways. When they finished, the card read, "You're our friend, and we're glad you're in our lives." Turning to Emily, the pride swelling in her chest was immediate. "You put a lot of thought into that. Just like you always say, Mom," Emily chirped, "sharing makes us happy." Sarah swallowed hard, realizing this moment was not merely about passing cookies and cards, it was about redefining their existence. For too long, she had believed they were confined to a narrow path, hemmed in by their circumstances. Today she realized that there was a choice: they could forge connections, create joy, and perhaps even discover resilience in themselves that they never knew existed. As they dressed warmly for the cold, Sarah's heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and fear. The door swung open, and the chill brushed against her cheeks. It was time to embrace the uncertainty and possibility of this new friendship, challenging the very limits she had maintained for so long. Yet, as they stepped into the biting wind, Sarah felt a sudden pause eclipse her bravado. Were they ready to open their hearts wider, not only to Mary but also to the unknown future? Would this simple act of kindness transform the trajectory of their lives? As they walked towards Mary's place, Sarah's mind raced. The initial connection had sparked something, but could she keep the warmth alive? What would tomorrow bring, and could they navigate this new landscape without losing themselves? As they approached Mary's home, the snow crunched beneath their boots, each step vibrating with uncertainty. Sarah glanced down at Emily, who walked with an optimistic bounce, blissfully unaware of the potential complexities that lay ahead. The innocence of her child fueled a flicker of courage in Sarah's heart, but beneath it lurked a tightening fear. What if their kindness was unwelcome? What if Mary turned away? The weight of responsibility was heavier than ever. "Mom, do you think she'll like the cookies?" Emily's voice sliced through Sarah's anxious thoughts. "Of course, she will," Sarah reassured, though her own uncertainty clung to her words. Everyone loves cookies. But did that truly matter? In her mind, the question echoed, would baked goods be enough to build a bridge over the expanse of Mary's pain? Every new friendship required vulnerability, and that was a currency Sarah felt she lacked. They reached Mary's front door, an old wooden structure marred with peeling paint, yet standing strong against the multitude of winters. Emily raised her small fist and knocked gently. Each impact of her tiny knuckles felt like a drumroll to the unknown outcome of their gesture. Moments later, Mary appeared, her expression shifting from surprise to warmth as she greeted them. "Oh, hello. What a lovely surprise!" she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. The smile that graced her face momentarily illuminated the depth of her struggles, and Sarah felt her heart constrict at the contrast, the warmth against the biting chill, the joy against the backdrop of sacrifice and solitude. "Hi, Mary. We made cookies for you," Emily chirped, presenting the plate with a flourish. "And we made a card too." Mary accepted the plate, her hands trembling slightly. "You are such sweethearts," she said, her voice soft, but lined with a hint of sadness. Sarah studied her closely, searching for clues within the faded lines of Mary's face. Was she really happy? Or was this just an act? As Mary carefully opened the card, tears pooled in her eyes. "Thank you, dear," she whispered, tracing the colorful letters as if they were an incantation to the warmth returning to her heart. Remarkably, for a fleeting moment, a bond was woven, a thread of shared humanity connecting them across the chasm of their circumstances. "Would you like to come in for a bit?" Mary asked after a moment, her invitation hanging in the air, rich with possibility. The offer stirred within Sarah a deep conflict, a tug-of-war between caution and the desire to explore this uncharted territory. Maybe just for a minute," Sarah replied carefully. To welcome Mary into their lives could be both an act of kindness and a test of everything she feared about herself about opening the door to intimate connections. Mary stepped aside, revealing an interior dimly lit but warmly adorned with handcrafted decorations. The space was modest, yet it whispered of stories longing to be shared. As they entered, Sarah's determination to foster courage wavered, beset with matters of propriety and safety. Yet, it was Emily who pulled her from hesitance. "Can we make hot cocoa?" she suggested, instantly infusing the moment with childlike exuberance. Sarah's heart fluttered at the thought of creating new memories, but the voice of her doubts shuttered her enthusiasm. What if they were intruding? What if this was too much for Mary to handle? Mary, catching the ambivalence flickering in Sarah's eyes, offered a gentle smile. "I would love that. Thank you." With the kettle on, the growing warmth in the corners of the small home began to seep into Sarah's bones, and she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. In the ensuing conversations, laughter danced in the air as stories were exchanged, each syllable building bridges where isolation once prevailed. Yet as the conversation flowed, Sarah sensed something deeper, a transformation in herself, not solely through the act of giving but also by receiving vulnerability from their new friend. With every shared worry, every shared laugh, she realized that this was not just an interlude in their lives, it was a revelation. But just as she began to believe in the beauty of this intricate weaving, a knock on the door shattered the moment. A shadow loomed through the frosted glass, a sense of foreboding settling around them. Who could be seeking Mary now? Sarah's pulse quickened, dread clutching her chest as uncertainty washed over her. Was this the moment the fragile connection would break? Would they regret stepping outside the comfort of their lives? As reality drew closer and the door creaked open, the person on the other side remained hidden from view. The looming uncertainty filled the room, mingling with the warmth that had just begun to blossom. In that instant, Sarah's desire to protect Emily surged forward, her instincts ignited by the unknown. But what kind of person would she become if she turned away from this moment? Could she let fear govern the choices she would make? As she prepared to confront whatever lay beyond the door, she realized the stakes were higher than mere cookies and introductions. It was about embracing the unexpected, facing her own fears, and truly experiencing the intertwining of lives come what may. The door swung wider, and just beyond it lay the answer that would change everything. As the door creaked open, Sarah held her breath, her heart thundering in her chest. The figure standing in the cold light of the porch was a rough silhouette, partially obscured by a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. An instant flood of emotions washed over Sarah: curiosity, apprehension, and an undeniable urge to protect Emily. She glanced at her daughter, who remained steadfastly innocent, her bright eyes opening wider with fascination. "Can I help you?" Mary's voice cut through the tension, soft yet steady, as she stepped forward. The woman's presence was unexpected. She seemed familiar, almost like an echo from Sarah's past. But the weariness on her face and the tattered coat she wore made it evident that she was bearing her own heavy burdens. Despite the chill, a mist of recognition flickered in Sarah's mind, a memory of long-forgotten moments when she too had felt lost and alone. "I am looking for Mary. I need to talk," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. Something in Sarah's gut tightened. The vulnerability she had just begun to embrace slipped back behind the walls she had spent years constructing. She exchanged a quick look with Emily, who, oblivious to the tension, took a step closer toward Mary, her hands clasped in front of her, and smiled brightly. "Hi. We made cookies. Do you want some?" Emily chirped, innocent and eager, her sweetness breaking through the tension like sunlight through clouds. Sarah watched as Mary's expression flickered from surprise to a more conflicted one, the three of them playing out a delicate balance of emotion. There was something unspoken in the way Mary's muscles tensed, her eyes darting to the newcomer and then back to the warmth of her guests. "Come in, please," Mary said hesitantly, moving aside to let the woman in. The invitation was tentative, laden with an unfulfilled understanding, which Sarah felt heavily pressing against the air around them. As the stranger stepped inside, a gust of winter wind followed her, carrying with it the acrid scent of smoke and unwashed clothes. Sarah's heart ached for her, a recognition echoing in her chest for an outsider seeking warmth. This moment felt like the intersection of paths leading back to her, a reminder of the fragility of connection and the unpredictability of human strife. "Thank you," the woman whispered, glancing around the cozy room, a bolt of longing in her narrowed eyes. "I didn't mean to intrude," she added, her voice a shard of ice amidst warmth. "No intrusion at all," Mary replied, yet her brow furrowed with an unspoken worry, an indication of a bond laden with history and unresolved issues that Sarah could only begin to fathom. The weight of uncertainty sat thickly in the room. What had brought this woman to Mary's door tonight? What was the thread weaving together their stories? As the tepid silence stretched, Sarah found herself facing a different kind of introspection. The urgency of the moment triggered memories of her past, of choices made under duress, of the delicate nature of trust. What if this moment was not just about Emily's innocent goodwill? What if it was an invitation for Sarah to confront the very fabric of her fears? Could she create a space here, even amidst the complexities, to unfold her own narrative rooted in vulnerability and acceptance? "Are you all right?" Emily's gentle inquiry broke the tension, her head tilted slightly, echoing an innocence that seemed to disarm the weight of expectation. The stranger's eyes softened as she knelt down to meet Emily's gaze, the barriers of adulthood crumbling under the warmth of a child's simple empathy. "I'm okay, sweetheart. It's just been a tough day." In that moment, an unspoken connection sprawled across the room, inviting all to share their stories. Sarah felt the dichotomy of fear and hope collide within her. Here it was again, the perpetual struggle between wanting safety for herself and Emily versus the embrace of genuine connections. "Can you tell me what is wrong?" Emily persisted, unyielding in her curiosity and sincerity. It was a spirit that compelled Sarah to reflect deeper. Where had her own courage gone? The thought spiraled within her. She had always safeguarded her heart against the complexities of others, yet here was her daughter, inviting trouble, extending hands, and exemplifying connection without hesitation. Before Sarah could answer, Mary stepped forward, breaking the spell of unfulfilled moment, as she addressed the woman. "Let us sit and talk." The unseen weight in the air thickened, weaving tension through every leaping heartbeat. Sarah felt drawn, pressed to make the choice before her. Would she stay rooted in self-protection, watching from the sidelines, or would she step into this moment and embrace the connections that had formed so unexpectedly? A new purpose unfurled within her this time, not just for herself, but for Emily too. The stakes were raised, the balance of trust and fear hung in the balance as the fragmented pieces of their lives began to interlace. Somewhere in the room's growing warmth, the chance for revelation simmered, igniting Sarah's spirit. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was her moment to redefine vulnerability and confront the shadows of her own past. Yet as they settled into conversation, another knock reverberated against the now fragile veneer of hope. What awaited them behind that door could unravel everything they had begun to weave. Sarah turned toward the door again, uncertainty swirling within her. Was this yet another test, yet another chance to embrace the unknown, or was it the disruption that would shatter the connection they had just begun to forge? With her heart thrumming a wild rhythm, Sarah took a deep breath, determined to face whatever lay beyond the threshold. It was time for truth, the moment of opportunity looming ever larger. As the second knock echoed through the small living room, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The warmth of the gathering felt suddenly fragile, as if the freshly baked cookies and soft laughter were mere mirages set against the harshness of reality. The stranger's presence had already posed a challenge to her antagonistic walls, and now another uncertainty loomed just beyond the door. What if it's someone who needs help? Emily's innocent voice drifted from behind Mary, as if she could sense the unease in the air. You can go on, sweetheart. Let me handle this, Mary replied with a touch of reassuring firmness, but the subtle tremor in her voice betrayed her own uncertainty. Sarah watched Mary move toward the door, her heart racing. It wasn't just a question of who was knocking, it was an opportunity. She could still retreat into the shadows, but she felt an inexplicable pull toward the light. What if embracing this unknown was a step toward healing, not just for others but for her own soul? With her mind teetering on the precipice of comfort and growth, Sarah stepped forward, her voice cutting through the room's tension. No, let me get it, she offered, surprising herself with the sudden depth of her conviction. She approached the door slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the knob. An image of the woman who had just entered flashed through her mind, face worn and pleading, a reminder of the layers of existence Sarah had spent years avoiding. But now, fueled by a desire to connect, she turned the handle and opened the door. The sight before her was unsettling. A man stood there, his clothes frigid and tattered, much like the woman before him. His face was streaked with dirt, revealing a gaunt figure that spoke of endless hardships. But what caught Sarah off guard was not just his apparent plight, it was the unmistakable warmth in his eyes that held a story, a life, and perhaps even a flicker of hope. Excuse me, he began, his voice softly resonating. I'm sorry to disturb you. I was hoping for some warmth and a little something to eat, if you have any to spare. I want tea. Impose. He paused, taking in the sight of the gathering around the table, all eyes suddenly on him. The moment felt electric, each heartbeat resonated with the weight of potential connection and the vulnerability of human existence. Sarah noticed the way Emily edged closer to Mary, her curiosity overshadowed by an instinct to protect. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to react with intention rather than fear. It's Christmas Eve. You're welcome to come in for a bit. Please, we have plenty of cookies and hot cocoa, she said, feeling a rush of resolve. Perhaps it was time to embrace the discomfort, to redefine what safety meant. The man's face softened, and for a brief moment, Sarah saw a flicker of gratitude wash over him. He hesitated, almost as if he doubted her sincerity, the soft light of the room contrasting starkly with the winter chill that encapsulated him. Thank you. He faltered. My name is Jack. Welcome, Jack. Sarah motioned for him to step inside. As he crossed the threshold, casting a lingering glance behind him, Sarah felt the significance of the moment settle over her. Not just another lost soul seeking shelter, but a living testament to the shared fragility of human experience. As Jack settled down in a corner chair, Mary resumed her previous position. With Emily now raising valid questions about where he'd come from, the forgotten pieces of Sarah's past began to bob up to the surface like flotsam. Every time she extended kindness, every whisper of doubt seeped in, leaving her sadly aware of how isolated she had kept herself. Yet as they offered Jack food and warmth, a sense of belonging stirred within her like the first whiff of spring thaw. How quickly had the complexities of her own fears faded into the background. Could genuine connection form in the most unexpected circumstances? The conversation unfolded tentatively at first, tales exchanged like currency. Jack's stories revealed threads of resilience, he spoke. Of family lost, of choices made in darker times, but interspersed were glimmers of joy, a reminder that life, even in struggle, had a rhythm of light. For Sarah, each word was a puzzle piece fitting into the larger image of her own life, revealing shadows she never allowed herself to address. The journey toward connection wasn't only about others, it was about navigating her own narrative and redefining her values alongside Emily. But as dawn began to break and laughter mingled with the remnants of the evening, the periphery of the moment slipped out of focus, revealing deeper shadows looming on the horizon. Clouds gathered as the air shifted, foreboding a storm both literal and metaphorical. Jack's final words struck a chord, a tale of a decision made that would alter everything. "Sometimes, the hardest choices can lead to the brightest paths," he said, a hint of sincerity illuminating his face. At that moment, Sarah's heart raced again, overshadowed by the new weight of what such choices entailed. The reality of connection was not just about warmth and comfort, it was also about confronting fears, redefining what it meant to be truly open. Deep inside, she knew they weren't done yet. The threads of fate had once again collided, and the narrative demanded more than just vulnerability, it craved authenticity amidst approaching challenges. Just as she found clarity in that moment, another chill swept through the room. The door creaked slightly behind her, stirring the atmosphere in ways Sarah hadn't yet anticipated. With a glance toward the door, anticipation coiling her stomach, she wondered who else might seek shelter in their growing tapestry of lives. The sudden creak of the door drew everyone's gaze, and the vibrant energy in the room shifted to stillness. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribcage, an urgent reminder of her vulnerability. Who else would come seeking warmth? She turned slowly, half expecting a familiar face, perhaps even someone from her past. Instead, it was another stranger, a woman this time, with weathered yet hopeful eyes that scanned the room like a timid bird seeking refuge. "Hello," the woman spoke softly, clutching a ragged scarf around her neck as if it were her only armor against life's harshness. "I'm sorry to intrude." I saw lights and thought, maybe her words trailed off, and Sarah sensed the weight of her hesitation. Uncertain but compelled, Sarah stepped toward her. The warmth of Jack's presence beside her made it feel as if she stood on newly solid ground. "Please, come in," Sarah urged, motioning to the empty chair across from Jack. "We have enough for everyone." As the woman shuffled inside, Sarah noticed the woman's trembling hands and the faint signs of distress etched across her face. She was a map of struggles that echoed in every line and wrinkle, reminders of hardships that mirrored Jack's. Sarah went from noticing the woman's discomfort to feeling it as if it were her own. Where there was once a meeting of strangers now lay an unspoken bond, the kind that flickered in grave times but ignited the promise of connection. "Thank you," the woman whispered gratefully, her voice cracking slightly. "I'm Hannah. I've really had a rough time." "It's okay," Sarah replied, her voice steadying with each syllable. She remembered how it felt to be vulnerable, how every opening, though frightening, could lead to transformative moments. "We're all here to share warmth and kindness tonight." Jack glanced at Hannah, a knowing look exchanged between them that conveyed shared experiences. It was a communication that didn't need words, deep resonances of struggle and survival. In that moment, Sarah realized that she was standing at a brink, watching a delicate weave of life unfurl before her, each thread reflecting parts of her own journey. As laughter picked up once more, weaving through blankets of conversation, Sarah recognized that chaos existed alongside growth. Each shared story of loss and recovery painted their reality, confronting shadows she had kept hidden. Stumbling into the depths of vulnerability, she felt an electric current moving through her, an awakening that crossed into actions she had avoided for too long. It was as if she were learning to breathe again amidst crushes of self-doubt. But when Jack began to share more of his fears of living day-to-day without a plan or a promise of safety, an uncomfortable realization settled over Sarah: she was being agitated to confront her own complacencies. While warmth and connection were blossoming, she was beginning to acknowledge the fragility in the very foundation she had built upon. Sometimes Jack's voice trailed off, his gaze distant. Sometimes, stepping into the unknown is scarier than anything else. Emily, who had been quietly listening, interjected innocently, but isn't the unknown what makes life exciting? Her wide eyes shined with the innocence of youth, and in that moment, Sarah felt the weight of Emily's truth. Perhaps this was the key, the realization that it wasn't merely about offering warmth but igniting courage, not just in herself but for everyone sitting together. Each shared story created a ripple, pushing them toward newfound strength. Yet, this kindness would demand more from her. It required a leap not just for her but for others who might cling to the threads of her decisions. As the conversation continued, the room filled with laughter and camaraderie, but lurking behind that warmth loomed questions Sarah wasn't ready to face. What would her next step be? Would she continue embracing this expanding circle of connection, or would fear and hesitation tighten their suffocating grip once more? Just then, a loud thunder rumbled outside, reverberating through the walls like an omen. Startled, they all paused, uncertainty washing over the gathering, shrouding the room in an eerie silence. It signaled not just a storm outside but an approaching storm within, one that Sarah could no longer ignore. With a newfound resolve, she looked toward Jack and Hannah, ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing this was only the beginning of a deeper exploration of herself and perhaps even the universe's intention for her life. Out of the shadows, new layers began to emerge, and Sarah could feel the edges of her own narrative sharpening, preparing her for an imminent confrontation with the unknown. As the lights flickered with the storm's arrival, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, how could she harness her courage to navigate through the tempest now brewing both inside and out? The thunder outside trembled through the walls like a haunting whisper, echoing Sarah's internal turmoil. She glanced around the room, catching sight of the flickering candlelight casting shadows on faces that were no longer strangers, yet felt so far removed from her own reality. She wasn't just hosting a gathering, she was confronted with a reflection of her soul, revealing fragments of herself she had buried under layers of routine and complacency. Why does the unknown scare me so? She pondered, her mind racing with questions she had long avoided. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, urging her to make a decision, to embody the courageous spirit she had admired in others. It was time to summon strength from the vulnerabilities she had shared, the connections she was cultivating. The realization struck her growth lay in the very confrontation she dreaded. Jack's voice pulled her back into the present. What if we shared our dreams? Not just fears, but what we truly hope for. His suggestion hung in the air, a gentle weight pressing down on Sarah's shoulders. It was daunting, yet intoxicating, a chance to unearth aspirations lying dormant beneath the surface. Swallowing her apprehensions, Sarah seized the opportunity. I want to start over, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been stuck in a cycle, convinced that my past defined my future. The admission tasted foreign on her tongue, a bitter remedy for years of self-condition. Hannah nodded slowly, vulnerability mirrored in her eyes. You know, I used to believe I was defined by where I slept or how empty my pockets were. But I'm realizing, it's what we do in moments of despair that shapes us. Her voice quivered, but there was strength behind her words. A shift in the atmosphere, something palpable, surged through the group. It was electrifying. Emily piped up, I believe you can change anything. Just like in a story, when the hero decides to do something different. The metaphor hung there, blazing luminescent. Sarah's heartbeat accelerated as if in synchronicity with the storm outside. What if our stories don't need to be defined by where we started, but by the leaps we take towards something new? She mused. The silence that followed was heavy with contemplation, the air thickened, wrapping them all in shared possibility. Sarah felt her heart thawing as she spoke, as if shedding the layers of trepidation that had clung to her for far too long. The shift was not just within her, it ignited a spark across the room, compelling each participant to acknowledge their own untapped narratives. Jack finally spoke up, maybe it's time for us to create a new milestone. We can push through dimensions we thought were unchangeable. Forget the fears that hold us back. Let us define what we want. He looked directly into Sarah's eyes, as if urging her to truly take that step beyond the fear. Do you think it's worth breaking the old molds? Sarah asked, unsure whether she felt fearless or terrified. The storm outside intensified, rattling the windows, mirroring the tempest within. "Absolutely," Hannah replied, her voice firm, filled with conviction. "This is our chance to rewrite the script." In that moment, Sarah felt a shift within herself, a decision forming in the crucible of shared desires and dreams. She was ready to navigate through the storm, not just for herself, but for those around her, empowering them to embrace their potential. Yet, the spark of bravery ignited the understanding that confronting the unknown would not be without its costs. Would stepping into this new narrative lead her to confront unresolved pain? What would it mean to truly redefine her life, knowing the past would always echo around the corners of her choices? As she looked at the faces surrounding her, Jack, Hannah, Emily, their expressions echoed the same mixture of courage and fear she felt simmering inside. Something was brewing, not just the storm outside but a convergence of destinies whose paths were intertwined. With a final glance at the flickering lights and the enveloping darkness beyond, Sarah clenched her fists, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. What awaited her as she ventured deeper into this unknown territory? What sacrifices would she need to make? The wind howled outside, and within, her soul echoed the tension of a new chapter about to unfold, one she could no longer ignore. Would she have the strength to embrace it all, a confrontation with her past, a redefinition of her dreams, a leap into wholeness? As the storm raged outside, the chaotic winds mirrored the tumult of emotions swirling inside Sarah. Yet there, amidst the flickering candlelight, she felt the burgeoning strength of her newfound family, a ragtag group bound not by blood but shared journeys through hardship. "Let us take that first step," she said, her voice stronger now, resonating with resolve. "Together." The faces around her brightened, compelled by the sincerity of her words. Jack nodded fervently. "Let us create our own stories, no matter our past. It's time to redefine ourselves, step by step." Hannah, emboldened by Sarah's determination, added, "Each of us carries pieces that are often overlooked but deserve to shine. Imagine what we can create when we lift each other up." Emily beamed, her youthful enthusiasm infectious. "Like superheroes. We can help each other be brave." With every affirmation, the gravity of their shared struggles transformed into the potential for new beginnings. Excitement buzzed in the air as they plotted what a brighter future could look like, not just for themselves but for others who might have felt invisible, just like them. As laughter mingled with aspirations, an aura of hope enveloped them, igniting an unexpected sense of agency within Sarah. They weren't merely treading water, they were forging pathways toward a renewed existence where vulnerability did not equate to failure but to unexpected strength. Each story shared became a brushstroke painting a mural of resilience, unearthing seeds of courage buried beneath their pasts. But the question remained, what was her next step? As the storm continued its tumult, Sarah realized that change wouldn't happen overnight. It was a process, a journey that required commitment and support. "Let us start by gathering supplies," she decided. "I know of a few places that could use our help on this Christmas Eve." Jack nodded eagerly. "I've always wanted to give back more. Let us do it together." "They won't expected," Hannah agreed, a glimmer of hope flashing in her eyes. As they plotted their first mission of kindness, Sarah felt a sense of purpose emerging from the ashes of self-doubt. This wasn't merely about offering food or warmth, it was about creating a ripple effect of kindness that could change lives beginning with their own. As they crafted plans, she felt walls of apprehension slowly crumbling away, revealing a sense of belonging she had long yearned for. They gathered supplies, cookies, and homemade warmth, transforming their living room into a hive of activity. Each productive moment solidified Sarah's belief that they were not just victims of their circumstances but architects of their reality. With each friend they planned to visit, they carried the unspoken acknowledgement that vulnerability could lead to connection. People would appreciate their efforts not out of pity, but because everyone, at one point or another, craved connection. As they stepped outside, snow swirling in their wake, Sarah felt the chill of the wind but also the warmth bubble within her, a burgeoning comfort in herself that she hadn't known before. The storm was no longer a harbinger of despair, it was a catalyst pushing them to take action, to change their narrative together. The first recipient of the warmth they carried was the local shelter, where their hearts could begin to beat in unison with familiar stories. Striding inside, they were greeted with a warmth that felt alive. As they set down their offerings, food, laughter, and hugs, she knew they were manifesting something far greater than simple charity. They were sowing seeds of recognition and transformation. "Thank you for sharing this with us," one woman exclaimed, her eyes glistening with surprise and gratitude. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat, not from the gesture's weight but from the profound realization that kindness mattered. It was never about the size of the gesture but the intention behind it. Each smile received generated a warmth that eclipsed the winter chill outside. In the weeks that followed, as she continued to pour herself into acts of kindness alongside her newfound friends, the memories of their struggles began to reframe her existence altogether. Months later, she stood at the same kitchen window, but lost in the view was a new clarity. Gone were the anxieties that were once all-consuming, in their place bloomed a solid confidence she hadn't imagined possible. Emily rushed to her side, now just a touch taller, wearing a proud grin. "Remember the time we went to help at the shelter?" "Yes," Sarah smiled, heart swelling with pride. "That day changed everything, didn't it?" "Yeah. We actually made a difference," Emily squealed. Sarah gripped her daughter's shoulders, feeling an unexpected surge of recognition and accomplishment. She had transformed her fear into palpable action, forging a narrative not just for herself but for Emily. They were writing a story that underscored their resilience and their shared humanity, one where compassion emerged as their greatest strength. And as another storm rolled in, Sarah stood resolute, knowing that while challenges would always exist, the journey of individual and collective growth continued, bolstered by authenticity and connection. She realized they held the power to write their next chapter. This was not merely survival, this was the pursuit of life, boldly redefining itself. Through the chaos of their shared journeys, they secured the understanding that fulfillment wasn't just a destination, it was the journey itself. As the snow fell outside, Sarah smiled knowingly, ready for all that lay ahead. She would face it head-on, with her heart wide open. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a decisive difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion below. I want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. Don't wait even one more second to share the power of personal overcoming stories.